Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. And I'm really pleased to be here, my first time in Cluj, and then to present this paper to you. And I must say, this is very much a work in progress, and this is also part of my, and this is also practice as research project, with me being a curator and also an academic. So, and this is an ongoing project that I started sort of in 2017, and there's more coming later this year. So this is work in progress, and I would very much welcome your comments and questions and sort of ideas on how it goes. So something may be still sort of ongoing, and I'm still trying theories and positions in this research. So I really I'm glad to be here and to present it to you. So, but I'll start with sort of why I got into this topic and what it means, and why it is so perfect to fit to this in-betweenness conference. Because I'll be talking about silent films and their curation in contemporary multimedia environment, and basically in my talks just in London, but also I'll be sort of touching upon other different sort of countries and regions. And the reason I started this interest in this research is that I have really, as a curator and as just a very keen cinema goer and fan of silent cinema. My previous research was much grounded in silent cinema. I found there's a really particular silent cinema and live music boom. The presentation of silent films with various kinds of acoustic and music accompaniment in London when I'm based. And I've done some research, and I checked some figures for, so this is 16, 18, my sort of years of my project, but I compared figures to 10 years before, and say 10 years before, it was hardly possible to find any sort of screening of silent films at all in London, or especially screening with large orchestras or with some kind of accompaniment. While in the past 2 years, this has really flourished, and it was really sort of an expansion and explosion of this kind of marriage between silent cinema and music. And it sort of ranged from large orchestra like London Symphony Orchestra, Philharmonic Orchestra, big invited orchestras, so full-scale orchestras, to experimental orchestras. This is something that I'll touch upon, which I curated some orchestras that come in from the audience, so various forms of that, to beautiful old organs, also to theremin's type of music accompaniment, drums, electronic music, acoustic music, a lot of huge variety of music accompaniment. And in terms of like cultural industry, the largest London cultural institutions took upon special programs which curate silent films with live music. And I'm talking about the Barbican, the South Bank Centre, huge stages as Royal Albert Hall, new and old cinemas like Electric Cinema. I mean, those of you who've been in London know about this sort of, there's been even a concert on Trafalgar Square where they showed lots of silent films with various sort of live orchestras. So that sort of caught my interest. And again, just to illustrate, last year there was a huge season of silent films with live scores, which not necessarily, which had a lot of films in general, but usually a very big amount of silent films there as well. So here's a press release from South Bank Centre. This is just an ongoing sort of list of events that is going on now at the Barbican, one of the largest sort of cultural institutions in London. And you can see that they all have, again, the variety of silent films presented, but they don't present silent films without live scores now at all, almost at all. And this is such an interesting phenomenon. And even as I'm speaking, like tonight, the London Film Festival is finishing next weekend, but tonight they're going to show the Fragment of an Empire with live score also by someone who's doing music for silent cinema specifically. And you know, guess what? I was just yesterday visiting my colleagues at Cluj Cultural Center, and they're saying, you know what, tonight in one of the institutions connected to Cluj Cultural Center, they are curating. There's an opening of exhibition, and they are doing silent cinema with new electronic score, and a specific artist is going to present it here. So. Again, I was just bombarded by this amount of sort of silent films that are presented with live scores, and I'm just sort of wondering what it is and what is happening there. And coming back, so this was sort of the background of my interest as a sort of cinema goer. Just to give you a little background of my curatorial position as well. So I got into curating several silent film screenings with live orchestras for an organization called Kino-Classica. And this is an organization in London, a charity that's there to sort of preserve London Russian language cinema. But again, it has really rich sort of traditions, and it has really beautiful cinemas, and there are lots of sponsors there. So it is also seen as a very much an expensive event now to go to silent cinema and listen to the music and a live orchestra there. And we had really sort of rich, like Berkeley sponsors there, and all sort of kinds of you know, I listed big institutions there. I also listed like big sponsors are very much interested in this sort of conglomeration of silent film, which has never been that sort of interesting and cool and posh in London, suddenly getting on the first stage of cultural initiatives. And with them we curated, and this is the beautiful interior of, I think one of the London private clubs, Soho House, but we also curated that in a beautiful sort of electric cinema, which is also one of the richest sort of London cultural institutions. And in those, so now coming back to the two films that I personally curated with silent cinema was this one, which we did as a part of World Twin season during the centenary of Russian Revolution last year. And this one was in the newly reopened oldest London cinema, Regent Street Cinema. And this is a very, so we were screening Battleship Potemkin, and Battleship Potemkin has been screened many times, so it's again a new way of appropriation of the old text. But what we did, we invited Max Reinhardt and his instant orchestra, and which is a completely new and interesting and very much impromptu idea, when we had three established musicians here in the audience on the stage, but all the instant orchestra participants were invited from the public, from the audience, and they've never seen the film, and they were creating their their response while watching the film, while the audience was also watching the film, and this had sort of enormously positive response from the. It was sold out, it was packed, and had a brilliant response from the audiences, from the press, and it was again a new sort of take on a very old and very, and I'll be talking about sort of a bit of theories there, and very analog film as Battleship Potemkin, something that everyone's seen. There was a very successful experiment, which we are very proud of. And the end of this season brought to Wien, which was dedicated to the cinema of change in terms of, and which coincided with the centenary of Russian Revolution. We curated also another sort of famous Eisenstein's film October. That time it was with the London Symphony Orchestra with full scale at the Barbican, which was also sold out, also had a very positive response in press, and we had, after that, as part of my research, I did some sort of questionnaires with the audiences, and I was very much surprised by the feedback I got from there, where I will go in a moment. Just setting up this scene for you, which I sort of now witness in London as a part of the audience interested in silent cinema and just going to concert maybe, and also as a curator, just being again almost forcing you into curating this with the music, because everyone does it, and this is now sort of the hegemony of this in London cultural scene. With this project, I would like sort of to think of what is exactly going on in this marriage of silent cinema and live music as a contemporary cultural events in London. Again, and they're becoming increasingly expensive, increasingly popular, and increasingly also chic and prestigious to attend. What is happening in this tandem? And I'm trying to sort of look into this in-betweenness and this gap between two very much analog forms of existence of sort of cultural institutions, silent film and live music, concerts, and sort of even opera in some respect. And I'm trying sort of to figure out, to reconsider how silent cinema and new sound is mixed intimately, and what's going on there in terms of relationship to the body and to the mind. And these are just some of the reactions from reviews and feedbacks from the audience. And what struck me at that point is they are very much sort of, again, intuitive. They're very much considered to, they're very haptic, they're very emotional. Audience members are talking about the experience being sensual, the experience being very modern, which is something that you wouldn't expect about, again, reaction in silent film. The experience being terrifying as well, something very much connected to senses, and has hallucinatory qualities and things that we wouldn't really expect from what you may perceive as a sort of quite a still and preserved form of cinema. Trying to put some theoretical basis under this, I wanted to sort of, and again, yes, so that sort of got me into thinking that the in-betweenness happening there must be something between the sound and image, that gap between feeling and experience, haptic and acoustic. What gives it these haptic qualities of hallucinatory, terrifying, sensual experience, and also very much about past and present. Where do we put that on timeline, and how does this relate to temporality and sort of time and space? One of the most sort of, and the theories I was trying to sort of put there as a background, first of all, coming back to Michel Serres and his ideas of temporality of sound, and the ideas that the temporality of sound as noise is sort of multi-temporal, right? And these screenings are multi-temporal, and they refer to the the idea of modernist sensibility and temporality, when we are not put on the linear form of past and present, when everything converges and get into this topological essence of which we sort of heard today also in the keynote speak. The ideas about time got me back to these experiments of Bill Morrison. If you've seen some of his images, his artistic works. And Bill Morrison is, again, he's an artist and a director who's finding silent old films productions and converting them into something that is viewable today, to a piece of art. But what he doesn't really take away this corruption of an actual film. He converts it into the present moment of us viewing that. And this corruption of the film is the only way of showing sort of the nature, the material temporality of film as a medium and of film as a temporal medium. And I would argue that the way current sort of tendencies of using silent films in this new multimedia environment very much sort of parallel to Bill Morrison's ideas of showing the very sort of temporality of film production and temporality of cinema, but despite of the actual instead of the actual qualities of film, the contemporary curators and the contemporary practitioners try to sort of marry that and convert that through sound, which initially has been present in that in the production of silent cinema in various forms, but now we try sort of to put it on a different level, on a different way. Another sort of interesting theory which I'm trying to put under these experiments here is, and I was really glad that Thomas Sasse also sort of quoted Brian Massumi in his keynote today, is the idea of this superiority of the analog in Brian Massumi's thought. And when Massumi is talking about analog, he's actually started this talk with the ideas of the virtual and the digital, but to come back to his ideas and to put them on what I'm trying to theorize in this project, is to remember that actually, you know, the silent film is probably the most analog of films that, you know, that we can think of, with the ideas of the, you know, full-scale orchestra as also being a very sort of analog, as we want to say, sort of experience way of sound and music, and the way we put that together can be described as very much a virtual way, because they abandon their quality, their modalities of the analog, and they are sort of getting out of their own analog sort of possessions and mixing with each other and marrying with each other with a very sort of digital and virtual way, if to follow Massumi's ideas. But at the same time, the urge for, well, the popularity that they produced is due to this sort of the very superiority of the analog that is implied within their essence. And of course, I couldn't miss Raymond Belroy here, our sort of one of the main critics here in this conference, who is talking about new forms being hollowed out from within, surrounded by the new forces that irrigate it. So again, to put this quote onto this project, I'm trying to sort of find out how this new marriage of cinema and music can actually getting a huge power, a huge sort of economic and popular force that makes it so attractive to the viewer. And I would like to end this paper with one experiment that I witnessed at one of the screenings at the BFI in London, which is not quite a film, but it preceded the screening of a silent cinema. It is an advertising for the Audi Q8. And you watch it for yourself. It's a very short, it's less than a minute, and then I'll finish after that and we can discuss. So, but I think it gives perspective on the use of film and live sound in general. do we have sound in here? Okay. Yeah, thank you. You see, so this was just an ad for a car, but which was screened before, which was placed before the screening of a silent film, and the choir, which is a various piece there, was actually put within the audience members, while the audience members were not aware of that. And then this suddenly, as the advertising begins, they come up, you know, in various locations in the audience and start singing, and then the orchestra start playing at the same time while the orchestra is playing on the screen. Very interestingly, it was also, and coming back to our ideas about Battleship Potemkin, the ad itself was filmed in Odessa port. So with some references to sort of Odessa steps, I presume. So again, I'm just sort of throwing these thoughts on you here, so showing there's definitely new modes of in-betweenness within this two mediums, and trying to sort of to marry those theories which I talked about today to those. But there's obviously, again, this is a work in progress very much, and there's obviously more to talk about that. So I would be very welcome for your comments and suggestions, and thank you. Yep.